Before I break into all of this, I just want to let you know that this channel is normally dedicated for all the quest lore that people have skipped reading over the 15 plus years that World of Warcraft has been out. So I really don't cover deep lore on this channel, but with the ending of Shadowlands being so bad, how can we really ignore it? So in this video, we're going to talk about why the ending of Shadowlands really doesn't work from a storytelling perspective. So let's jump in and find out what's really going on in World of Warcraft. Before we begin, if you're new here, my name is Quaylen, and I summarize all the quest lore that many people have skipped reading over the past years while playing World of Warcraft. So if that's something that interests you, then make sure to subscribe to the channel. I love to have you around. So before we start, getting into the end of Shadowlands and start bashing it and whatever, just like every other YouTube video out there right now, let's talk about the basics of emotion and storytelling. Video games are movies, but you get to play them rather than just watch them. So if video games are like movies, then the focus really is to create an emotion. But if your emotion comes out as, okay, that was really stupid and this is horrible writing, that's not really the emotion that you want to go for if you're trying to tell a story. It pretty much says that something just isn't right. And it's because there's something called the suspension of disbelief. And if you've never heard that phrase before, the suspension of disbelief is the concept of becoming emotionally involved in a narrative. So to the audience, the characters become real, and the emotions that are happening to the characters are now happening to the audience. So when you're watching a movie or reading a story or something and you say, oh, that's really dumb, that's horrible writing, then you're really not suspending your disbelief. When a story is suspending the disbelief of an audience, you know that it's doing it when there's emotions such as anger, sadness, and happiness. And a really good story will push those emotions deeper and have something like melancholy or loathing or even excitement. That's what you really want to feel when it comes to storytelling. Regarding World of Warcraft, a really good example of this is when Gul'dan killed Varian. There were so many people pissed off at Gul'dan for what he did. Or even back in 2017 when they showed the cinematic for Battle for Azeroth at BlizzCon. Being in that audience and hearing Sylvanas say "for the Horde," well, just check this out. I was in the Overwatch arena when that happened, and the excitement was so strong, it still gives me chills today. Anyways, these emotions become really important when it comes to storytelling because you are putting yourself in that situation, thus suspending your disbelief. So why doesn't this work with Shadowlands? To understand this, we need to go back and talk about the best expansion that ever happened, which is Wrath of the Lich King. There are many reasons why Wrath of the Lich King worked, and here are a couple. Arthas was a character that derived from the original Warcraft series. There was a lot of history there before the idea ever came out for an expansion for the Lich King, which means it had a lot of time to build and fester and get in people's minds and have them start thinking about the story. The Frozen Throne happened and people played it and were wondering what happened to Arthas. Another reason is that his story was pretty simple to understand. And this is a big one. A guy took a path that he thought was good, and then he was seduced into becoming the Lich King, and then he wanted to unite the entire planet as undead to fight against the Burning Legion when they came. Pretty basic storyline, and that's great. Most importantly, his character arc gave us, the players, a sense that we needed to take him out because he was a threat to something tangible. And that tangible thing was the very lives of our characters and the world that we lived in. And knowing all of this and how invested we became with our emotions, it felt liberating once we killed him and Bolvar took over the throne because it also gave us an ending. There was a cap, there was something that finished it off. Now, knowing all of this, let's talk a little bit about Shadowlands and how that didn't really work out. The Jailor was very new. I mean, there wasn't even any talk about him until, I think, the announcement of the expansion itself. And Blizzard wanted us to feel that he was a really big threat, like the biggest threat that's ever happened to Azeroth and beyond. So the Jailor's plan was to... Okay, this is where it gets kind of confusing. So a lot of characters in-game have different perspectives on what the Jailor's purpose really was. Prince Renathal thinks that if the Jailor escapes, then all of the realms of death will fall. Lady Moonberry thinks that the realms of the Shadowlands would plunge into an inescapable despair. Sir Denathrius and Herald Delora think that the Jailor would leave death as the single main power remaining. And Sylvanas says that if he escaped, then it would shatter the system of death and leave everyone to truly have, free will. So maybe all these things were gonna happen if the Jailor escaped his prison or whatever. But then the Jailor, also known as Zoval, used the Forge of Souls beneath Icecrown Citadel to draw Azerite because he intended to use the power of Azeroth to control something called the Machine of Origination, thereby making the cosmos under his control.
Phenomenal cosmic power!
Sounds really cool, but this doesn't really come off as a big threat to us as the player. And here's why. It doesn't affect us directly as a character. I mean, we have a hard time grasping the idea of the cosmos because it's such a big, vast thing that if we can't grasp that concept, then it's not really real to us. Whereas compared to the Lich King story, our lives were on the line, and so were the lives of our loved ones, whether they lived in Orgrimmar or Stormwind or any other city in Azeroth. So in the Jailor's case, we were losing the cosmos, which doesn't really compute in your head. Here's a really good example. Imagine a room with 5 people inside of it. Then imagine another room with 5 million people inside. 5 million becomes a really hard number to fathom inside of your head. Whereas 5 people, you can easily see it. And once you've established that information, then you start creating ideas of what do these people look like? What are their facial features? What kind of clothes are they wearing? With the 5 million, you just think that's a lot of people in a room, and that's about it. Your mind doesn't start processing certain detailed information that will later become important to you. This is the difference between something that's fathomable and something that isn't. Now, the big thing that gets people really upset about the Jailor is the way that it all ended. At the end, Zorval says something about how a cosmos divided will not survive what is to come. So basically, he's not the big baddie that we all thought he was because there's something that's even worse than him on its way. And that means that Blizzard played the "I'm sorry, our princess is in another castle" stunt on all the WoW fans. And just a little side information, if you look closely on Toadstool, he's been giving you all the finger for the last 25 years. Defeating the Jailor is not really exciting at all because everything mentioned before, and also just nobody really cares. Whereas in Wrath of a Lich King, when Arthas died, the feeling was victorious. You can feel it in videos like this.
We got it. That fuck.
Or this.
Perkele. Tappaa 3 pro. 2
Sokki, pois sieltä
Kyllä.
keskeltä.
Sokka.
Nuke. Ei, perkele.
Ei vittu.
Eikä mennä
Keskitään.
Nuke tämä.
Ja se on siinä!
Nuke.
Or even this.
Come on.
Got this. Yes.
Come on.
As compared to, well, there aren't any videos of people freaking out about killing the Jailor because it's not important to anybody. So what would be nice going on from here? And before I talk about these things, these are just personal ideas that I think would be great to integrate back into the game. I would love to see characters go back to being nobodies. The idea of our characters being the prophesied Mawwalker or the champion or the chosen one or anything like that really puts a damper on the whole gaming experience, because if I'm the chosen one, then why is your character running around also proclaiming to be the chosen one? Again, suspension of disbelief, because I don't believe that I'm really the chosen one because that guy's character is the chosen one as well. It was better when everyone was a nobody, united under a cause, which was to sustain either faction, whether it was the Horde or the Alliance. The other thing I'd like to see come back into the game is a simplistic lore. In this case, less is more. And this is because I'm a very simple person, and a lot of you out there are like, well, if you don't understand all this, then you don't get the game and whatnot. And that's fine. If you're like that, if you're just love to eat up all this deep, deep lore, and that's your thing, then I'm really, really happy for you that you're getting an excitement out of this. As for me, I like to keep it simple, and I know that I'm not the only one out there. Now, Balular said it best in one of his recent videos about how there's all these little bits of information that are lying around that kind of form this big puzzle. He said, once all these pieces click together and we kind of get what the overall cosmology is, do you think we can go back to just telling regular stories? I honestly couldn't have said it better myself, because honestly, I miss those days of swords and shields and magic and the occasional dragon killing. If you stuck around this long, then thank you for watching this video, and if you're interested in watching other summary videos that explain the quest lore that you may have been skipping reading over the past whoever knows how long you've been playing World of Warcraft, then go ahead and check out my other videos and make sure to subscribe to the channel. And with that, I will see you next time when we find out what's going on in the Tales of Azeroth.